obviously, it's not your first Tearsheet rodeo. Thanks for coming back and talking to us about N26 and marketing. And you continue to be one of the standouts in terms of building a global brand in the space. Let's start by talking about yourself and your role. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, everybody, I'm Patrick. I run global marketing at N26, which is essentially the CMO role here. I've been here for about 2 years, which has been an incredible journey. So really seeing us move from kind of our D round to E round, about a delta of about 2 million customers. It's been a fascinating experience, and yeah, really helping the team come together, define how we do marketing at scale, as you said, for a global brand in a very interesting space.
And I don't hear a German accent, so maybe what was the decision to hire? I assume you're American, but an American to run global marketing for a global brand?
Yeah, I'm not American. I'm actually half Dutch, half German.
Wow.
Very deeply culturally confused, Zach.
I'm sorry.
Which really might be the potion. I think that is that's part of the potion, or the recipe is cultural curiosity. I think the one thing you need to build a global brand, global business, is to just be open to the world and curious about what makes people tick, how that's different across the world. I've had the pleasure of growing up very internationally, and I have the astounding sort of gift that was given to me that I've seen different places of the world growing up, and so I'm one of these people that can get out of an airplane, just feel at home wherever that may be.
That is a gift. So maybe you could start, Patrick, by talking about N26 Point of Differentiation, and I'd love to hear why you think that matters.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points of differentiation starts that this is a bank built without bankers, and I don't say that to piss anyone off, but I think at the very core, this business started by people that didn't come from the banking world and were able to look at banking and retail banking as customers, as consumers, and really put their frustrations into building a better experience. I think what differentiates us and sets us apart is a vastly more intuitive retail banking experience, an experience that really breeds confidence instead of self-doubt, worry, and anxiety, which you often see when people relate to their banks, when they speak about banks, when they speak about other brands, when they speak about their own banking experience, let alone money in itself. It's a very anxiety-driven conversation. And I think what we do our best to provide is the opposite. It's an experience driven by people that are building the banks as customers and really thinking through what that means. And the objective that I try to put in front of them is build something that builds confidence instead of destroys it. If we can do that in money management, if we can do that through banking, we're going to improve people's lives. I have absolutely no doubt. The outcome of that is an experience that's super fast, is incredibly affordable and easy. We still have a free product in the markets that we operate in. We're increasingly one of the only players to be able to do that. Obviously, lighter overhead, starting from scratch, all of that helps in that direction. But it is very much part of the philosophy that we have is providing access to that type of an experience to more people.
And it sounds, just the way you sort of introduce yourself, that you don't necessarily look to the traditional financial industry for inspiration in terms of branding or positioning or products. I'm sorry, don't mean to put words in your mouth, but like, who do you look to for inspiration?
Look, respectfully, there are amazing businesses out there, and some of them certainly in the operational side and have explored what financial services can be. But I think many of them have lost track of passionately trying to deliver an excellent customer experience. And I think, look, I don't think consumers are to blame for that, but they have become complacent, right? They've accepted lower standards over the decades. So no, we don't spend a lot of time looking at the existing sort of incumbents within the banking industry for inspiration. I think most of the time we spend looking at ourselves and looking at customers. Of course, we're hyper aware of what competition's doing, whether that's new competition, whether that's existing incumbents. But what we try to do is really spend more time with our customers than with our competitors. I think if you do that, you'll end up building a lot of imitation products and being fixated on what the rest of the category is doing. Whereas if you listen to your customers, what's frustrating them, you'll be inspired to fix what's not working perfectly yet. And lo and behold, every 10 conversations or so, they say something. You go, wow, that's brilliant. If we were only able to build that, that's a whole new chapter to what we're doing right now.
Awesome. And as I hear you speak, Patrick, I also hear like sort of this ethos of disruption. And you use that term yourself. So what has been the most exciting and challenging part about disrupting the traditional industry?
Other than the fact that of course you're kind of the new kid on the block, right? And it comes with ups and downs. It comes with a lot of pressure. I think if I think about, I think the most exciting bit is the enthusiasm of millions of customers across the world. We have 7 million customers. We've been around for 5 years, and that is the most exciting part of this. And what starts early as excitement, then turns into this sense of unbelievable responsibility. Like, oh wow, we just wanted to do something better. Now what we're doing has become really important, and it's become scalable, and it's changing people's experience at scale. And we have to take that responsibility very seriously. Not that we haven't, but there's almost that in the early days, it's only excitement, and then quickly you realize you're building something that a lot of people depend on, and that becomes more and more important. But that enthusiasm, I think, that of our customers, their involvement with the product, the way they interact with us, the engagement they show on the product, on our social channels, the way they're willing to celebrate what we do, but also criticize what we do openly, I think is really exciting. On the challenging side of things, it's hard to be a challenger, as the word says, in an existing category with incumbents that have very deep pockets, and I would say very deep roots into every part of the financial ecosystem. And I think what's often been very challenging are not the obvious, but the hidden barriers to come to competition globally across markets.
Like regulation,
again, whether that's incredibly deep pockets to spend and try to spend us out of the market, or really deeply rooted regulatory and government relationships that raise barriers to entry for other players.
One of the things that I find so interesting about N26 and the story was, the ambition to go global at the time that a lot of the incumbents were sort of retreating from some of their forays overseas. And so, how does being a global brand play into your strategy?
In every possible way, because we sort of decided to build a global business, and so that in itself sets direction for what you do. But if you think about it, banking is a very strange category, very strange place as an outsider when you kind of look at it. If you think about it as a customer, we're happy to drive in global automobile brands. You can drive a Chevy in Europe, you can drive an Audi in the United States. We watch even Volvo, whatever it might be. Watch global entertainment. Everybody's on Netflix, global brands, global entertainment, global shows with a bit of local flavor. Drink global beverages, right? Coke or beers or Bud or Heineken across the world. But we've been willing to bank locally for the last 100+ years. And the result of that is we practically do the same thing banking across the world as customers, and yet sort of in the incumbent banking space, we've got German banks for Germans, we've got French banks for French people, Dutch banks for Dutchies, and American banks for Americans. And yes, there's been some border hopping, and there's been some examples of banks that have sort of M&A and acquired local businesses. But in the retail space specifically, I know it's different for the corporate space, but in the retail space, you don't see a lot of global banks and a lot of global businesses. And so we set out to do that differently. We have a deeply rooted belief that is not just possible, but a key advantage to our customers. And so the strategy has always been to define the global best practice experience and then bring that to all the markets, because there are huge deltas. If I think about the sophistication of the Dutch, for example, where I'm sitting right now, the Dutch digital banking ecosystem, I translate that even just a few countries down to the south of Europe, the delta is impressive, let alone you really start to look across different continents. So if we can raise the bar across the board, and some of those deltas might be smaller than others, that's going to be a real experience to others. And we also believe that operating as a global product and brand gives us scale, investment depth, global talent pool that we can source from across markets, which eventually we'll be able to deploy to provide, again, a better customer experience. Now, your question was how being global plays into strategy and marketing specifically, Zach. I think in doing that, we need to make sure it doesn't feel like a cookie cutter approach. You're happy to join a global brand and a global product, global experience. And I really do think that what people want from retail banking across the world is identical, right? They want their money to be safe. They want it to be accessible. They want to make sure they're using it the right way. They want to feel in control. They want to feel they have power across that money. What does change though is the role of money in culture. And so the product can definitely be global. I think we can probably speak about the product in an identical way across the world, but on the fringes, we need to identify exactly where we need to change the way we speak about money and culture, because there are different taboos, there are different ways to speak about it, there are different occasions to talk about money in the public space and in the private space. And I think if we are, again, curious enough to understand that, then building a global bank in retail banking is, I don't want to say child's play, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and I like that analogy to other types of businesses that have gone global, like you said, beverages or auto. So how do you differentiate then in a market where there are these nuances, local nuances, though at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. We do have different relationships in different countries with money. Like how does N26 differentiate itself against local players? Yeah, how do you do that?
And that often depends also on the local sort of competitive ecosystem. So there are countries in which we dial up for example, the visual aesthetics of our cards. There are countries where that is a much more important decision factor than the smoothness with which you're able to transfer money, surprisingly. But people tick differently in different countries. In some countries, the importance of clear statistics on how you're spending across a month, I think very, very sort of on brand for Germans. That's a very important thing. You want to know exactly what you're doing with your money where. And so that is a more important, I would say, proof point in those cultures than it is in others where again, some of the aesthetics might be more important. So I think around the edges of the core experience, what we dial up and down is definitely differentiated.
So it sounds like the differentiation comes through in communication, positioning, and branding. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And then, of course, it comes through, this is the less of a differentiation within the market, but across markets with local payment integrations, making sure that you can pay your taxes on our accounts and all of the ways that you kind of have minimum requirements across different markets.
And Patrick, what do you use to measure your success? What kind of KPIs? I know in the early days, in our coverage, we tried not to get swept up in it, but it was, a year or two ago, it was all about, how many accounts you've opened. That's that sort of frenzy of just like the headline number, which is important, but doesn't really speak to the health of the business per se. Like I think that's sort of, we've matured beyond that as an industry, but how do you guys judge your success?
Data. I'll joke aside. Look, in a number of different ways. And of course, we look at the amount of customers we add to the business, the amount of customers that stick around with the business. So not just growth, but loyalty, which is one way of seeing if customers are happy with the product. But I think one of the most important ways continues to be measuring whether or not we're delivering a positive experience to customers. Which we do in multiple ways, including, of course, through NPS studies, app ratings, reviews, the feedback loops that we get from customers, the way that they speak to us in customer care, all of your usual data. I think I mentioned this before somewhere, but one of the ones that I like is that combination of loyalty. Do people stick around? Do they start using our product as an everyday banking experience in combination with how much business they put with us, and so their lifetime value? Because I feel their lifetime value is very much a reflection of how much value they attribute to us, right? So when a customer has been with us for a year on a free account and they decide to upgrade into a premium subscription and pay a small monthly fee for additional services, to me, that is a great proof point of somebody that's happy with the product, looking to upgrade and looking to stick around. If they're starting to deposit their salary, if they're starting to do all their interaction with direct debits, their subscriptions on the account, yes, they become more valuable to us as a customer, but I believe that's only because they feel we've added more value to them as a customer.
I like that point. And one of the things we've heard so far in the Big Bang Theory conference from a few different presenters was like, obviously you want to be important to your customers, but do you need to be the primary account to play that role? Like, I guess, how do you think about that? Like, is your goal as the head of marketing globally to turn a prospect into a primary customer? Or can N26 be an important part of a portfolio of services that they use?
That's a strategy choice. I think that there are certainly players out there that will choose not to be primary account. and focus on one very specific use case. I dare say that in our early days, a lot of people joined N26 as a travel card, right? So young audience, international travelers, backpackers, students realized that we had no foreign exchange fees, no ATM fees in multiple countries. And so border hopping was easy with us. Plus we had great deals with booking.com and a couple others and travel insurance. We could have stuck to that. We could have made the strategic decision to say, hey, we're going to be the world's best travel card. I think very long time ago, there was a large business with checks, or travelers checks, that was built on a very similar
Remember those days, yeah.
Our choice from the beginning has been not to be that. And so we've always set out to really change the relationship with money that people have. And for us to do that, we want to become their primary banking partner. And that's always been an ambition of ours to have, and that's definitely coming to light. Now, different people try us out or join us for different reasons, and those use cases can be, I'm traveling somewhere and somebody recommends N26 as a great travel card, or I see somebody's metal card and I want to know what it is and I want one of those, or indeed, I'd like better control or instant transfers, or I'd like to have an international experience, or I just like to upgrade and not have to come into a bank store anymore and have a digital only experience. And whatever your initial use case is to try us, I think that's fine. And I think we need to celebrate those different use cases in their own individual ways. But then once you join us, absolutely, it's my task with the team, Zach, to prove to you as a customer that we're worth your trust, to become your primary banking partner.
Got it. Thank you for that. You joined us at our Acquire conference earlier this year and talking about bringing on new customers. How has your thinking evolved around acquiring customers to drive growth and, trust? There's a saying in banking, like, money is all about trust. Like, what role does trust play, I guess, in your customer acquisition strategy?
I don't think that's wrong. We also have another saying in Dutch, which is trust comes on foot and leaves by horse. It's hard to build, but it's easy to lose.
Yeah.
I've always liked that.
That's
Look,
true.
I think trust is critical, and it's probably the single most important qualifier. People don't trust you, they're not going to put the money in your bank. So that, no debate, no conversation. I think that's absolutely crucial. And the way that we try to do that is by being transparent, honest, open, communicating. If we're going to charge you a fee, you'll know about it beforehand. If something costs something, you'll know about it beforehand. There's no hidden fees. We're not charging. I think the U.S. banks charged customers $11 billion worth of ATM fees last year that they probably didn't know about beforehand. It's sustaining an entire industry. It's important to me that if you're going to incur those types of costs, they not be hidden fees, but they be transparent. And if I ever find myself in a situation where there's friction between transparency and profit, transparency will win in this business, and I've seen that happen on a number of occasions. And so trust, by keeping your money safe, by being transparent and honest and open with you, it's a qualifier. There's an interesting point in what you asked around acquisition, which is, I think if you come to us without the initial or without the primary motivation of instantly becoming your new primary bank account, trust is still important, but risk is not as high. And so, again, I'm very open for people that want to give N26 a spin, want to try us out, and then it's up to us to prove our value to you. And so I think that's where the barrier to change can be quite low for people. And I also think that's where potentially we'll see a lot of change in user behavior and customer behavior in the category in general going forward.
Interesting. What tactics do you use to humanize your voice?
To humanize our voice? I don't think we have any tactics. We just try to speak like people. There's people writing our voice. There's if I read something that doesn't sound like one of us could have said it, it's not right. Does that make sense? I don't think there's much more rocket science. It's the complication in this category is that there's a whole lot of lingo and jargon and legalese. So try to cut all the legalese. T's and C's, there's a place for all of those, but in your primary communication with customers, please try to speak like them, and like all of our competitors, please do as well, because there's no point for people to look at this entire category and feel like they don't understand the word of what's being said.
So is the positioning, do you position N26 almost as like a friendly voice, or is there some, is it an institution talking down? Like where does it sit, I guess, in a hierarchy?
Eye level.
I
Eye
love
level. I want to be somebody that's right by your side. I want to say that potentially, if you look at our brand and if you look at our assets, our tone of voice, I dare say we're probably one of the most approachable voices out there. I also don't want to scream from the building how I'm different and revolutionizing and breaking shit.
no banging the
People will
chest.
notice we're different. And I think we do that by, yes, once in a while we quip and we shout a bit harder. But it has to be approachable also in terms of our colors, in terms of our design language. It differentiates itself by its humanity and approachability.
Patrick, I really enjoyed this. We have time for one last question. I want to look ahead and get your opinion on what you see. How are banking customers evolving? And if they are, like, what does a future customer look like as opposed to today?
Hopefully for us, they look as diverse as they come. I think part of that being such an approachable bank and brand is that, like, we're open to business for anybody. Creed, color, religion, you name it. So please, and none of this previous generation, banking is for one person in the household and kind of one individual controls the income. Like, distribute it within the household. Let everybody have their bank account. Let everybody control their finances. Let kids start early. But anyways, that's not exactly what you're asking for. I think one thing that I am expecting is that I'm hoping is that on the one end that future customers will be less complacent, that they will no longer accept subpar experiences. And it sounds like I'm saying that because I want them to leave the incumbents and come to me. But trust me, that raises the bar for our performance as well, right? It's the old, what was the old joke on Saturday Night Live? You're in the airplane and the Wi-Fi is not working on the first time that they ever do it, and people complain that the Wi-Fi isn't working. Well, you come to an experience like art, you very quickly get used to a better experience, and so they will continue to challenge us to raise the bar. I also think that switching behavior will be much higher than it has been in the past because we are now teaching millions and millions of customers across the world, myself, other competitors in other markets, that switching banks is okay, that the risk is not as high as you might have perceived, and the benefit is quite significant from a customer experience perspective. And so what we're creating is a whole generation of customers that we will have to fight for their loyalty. And loyalty will definitely exist, but they'll raise a high bar for us as companies, and I think that's a good thing. So competition, in the way that it should, I think, is raising the bar and creating an environment that at the end of the day will be good for customers. Yeah, we'll have to keep fighting for their loyalty.
I appreciate that honesty. Patrick, always great talking to you. Thanks for joining us at the Big Bang Theory Conference.
Thanks, Zach. Pleasure.